hidden among rolling hills
We're actually very close to Austin.
and deep ravines.
This is one of the best kept secrets, I think, in this entire area.
A grotto virtually untouched by man.
We have no public access, there's no public road.
The Roy Creek Canyon Reserve. The canyon is located just a few miles west of Austin, near Hamilton Pool and Reimers Ranch. Roy Creek runs through the reserve, fed by naturally occurring springs, then flows into the Pedernales River.
This is the old cedar ladder that was originally constructed back in the 1930s. It's the first way they were able to get down in the canyon.
Lou Adams' father and a friend bought the canyon from the surrounding ranch in 1941.
They decided at that time, seal the deal with a handshake, that they would keep it in its pristine condition forever and never develop it.
Why is Lou worried about the future of Roy Creek Canyon? The ranch land surrounding the canyon was sold, and plans for a new 1,400-acre conservation-scale development were announced called Mirasol Springs. It has become a sacred site for students.
It's nowhere like I visited.
Yeah, I've never been anywhere like this.
And scientists.
I've got salamander.
Are you rolling?
I'm rolling.
We're some of the only people ever to see this species in the wild.
Colin Morrison, a PhD student at the University of Texas, visited the canyon while researching a rare species of passion vine.
He walked down this trail and he looked over, and within 15 minutes he found the vine right here.
This is one of the most pristine areas that I've seen in the hill country. It's a really good place for researchers to go because we can see what that part of the hill country looked like before it became developed like it has now.
There's no other place like this. It's a one of a kind. When it's gone, it's gone.
This is the Roy Creek Canyon Reserve. And this is where Dallas billionaire Stephen Wynn plans to build Mirasol Springs. According to a plan published on their website, Mirasol Capital, the group behind Mirasol Springs, plans to build 50 homes, 30 cottages, and a hotel, hiring design firm Hart Howerton to oversee the construction. Mirasol Springs will also host a field station managed by the University of Texas for continued research of the property. Jim Truitt, director of Mirasol Capital, tells KXAN that the new Hill Country Field Station will serve as an anchor for the environmental stewardship that the property represents.
I've had lots of interactions with developers and groundwater suppliers, and this was really unusual.
Hydrologist Brian Hunt says he was one of several scientists consulted by Mirasol Capital and CEO Stephen Wynn as part of the project.
He was wanting to understand the system and what the challenges were. And so that's the way they view it. I think they see these as challenges that can be overcome.
We asked Mirasol Capital about its specific plans and goals. Truitt told KXAN that while they are still in the early stages of development and nothing is finalized, preliminary plans are that homes built on the property will include multiple deed restrictions, such as the prohibition of pesticides and ensuring 100% collection of rainfall on roofs. Traffic will be limited on the property, and a dark skies ordinance will be in place, helping reduce light pollution. The air grew noticeably colder as Lou Adams led us deeper into Roy Creek Canyon in early January.
This canyon's about 200 feet deep.
Its limestone walls jutting up around us.
This is just a sample of the limestone cliffs that surround the entire canyon.
Lou pointed to a section of the wall.
It has the consistency of Swiss cheese.
This karst, as it's called, is one of the reasons Lou is concerned about the construction of Mirasol Springs.
Groundwater hits the top, it ends up filtering down, and we're concerned about it, ending up in the creek. Any development that was within the watershed of Roy Creek eventually goes into the Pedernales and eventually into Lake Travis.
This is something the developers of Mirasol Springs know.
Travis County commissioned a groundwater study, so it's really kind of fortuitous.
Brian Hunt, a hydrologist with the Bureau of Economic Geology at UT, says he has met with Lou Adams and the Mirasol Springs team.
I've talked to both, and I've given sort of both of them kind of a preliminary assessment.
His focus, the pathway water takes on the property.
The pathway of groundwater flow is complicated. It can go in and right back out, or it can go a little bit deeper, and all of it eventually is headed towards the low points. So that's along Roy Creek.
Meaning any construction runoff, septic systems, or wastewater could eventually find its way downstream. And Hunt says the springs that feed Roy Creek would be under threat if wells were built.
If they pump groundwater in the layers that are feeding those springs, clearly there's going to be an impact. So I communicated that.
Based on this and others' research presented to the team, Jim Truitt, president of Mirasol Capital, told KXAN that septic systems and private wells won't be built on the property. Rainfall will be harvested, reducing runoff, herbicides and pesticides will be banned, and curbs, gutters, and storm drains will not flow into the creeks.
This is the hill country of central Texas. Each spring, something happens here that happens nowhere else. Tiny birds called golden-cheek warblers come back to their special home. What's so different about this land of dry hills, rough canyons, and hundreds of clear springs that makes the birds risk such a dangerous journey?
In 1975, a documentary was released that would be shown in classrooms for decades.
Every golden-cheek's nest ever found has been built of this cedar bark.
Produced in Roy Creek Canyon by two well-known conservationists, Lou Adams's parents.
It's an actual warbler nest that came from the canyon. As you can see, it's woven with cedar bark.
The warbler calls the canyon its home, and it may be key in Lou's goal of preventing any development there, by way of a conservation easement. Frank Davis is the Chief Conservation Officer with Hill Country Conservancy. What is a conservation easement? How does it work? How does it protect the land?
Rather than the right to impact the land, it's the right to ensure that the land is not developed.
Here's how it works. Say you own land you don't want developed, and the land meets specific criteria, like serving as habitat to an endangered species. A group like Hill Country Conservancy buys the conservation rights to your land.
It's going to remain with the land forever, so if they choose to sell the land, it's going to be subject to that conservation easement in the future.
And Lou Adams is working with Hays County to get one placed on the reserve.
People must use the land, but we must use it wisely. Shouldn't some parts be left wild and undisturbed?
Frank says since conservation easements last forever, they take about a year to set up, but they're becoming more popular across the state. Mirasol Capital Director Jim Truitt tells KXAN he is hoping to place the majority of their development, Mirasol Springs, under a separate conservation easement. That property surrounds Roy Creek Canyon. When it comes to conservation, there's a lot of land that the Mirasol Springs development is planning to protect, including a 2.5-mile stretch of Roy Creek, the creek that feeds into the Roy Creek Canyon Reserve and then flows into the Pedernales and then Lake Travis, one of the sources of Austin's drinking water. While it isn't the only water source that connects to this system, Mirasol Capital Director Jim Truitt says that they take stewardship of it seriously. Stephen Wynn, the CEO of Mirasol Capital, tells KXAN, if Roy Creek has been impacted, then our project has failed.
Bass spawns in the creek, it comes up in the river.
For Lou Adams, owner of the Roy Creek Canyon Reserve, the preliminary work undertaken by Mirasol Capital has been a good sign.
There is such a tremendous opportunity here to use this as a living laboratory of how to restore and bring our hill country back to its natural state.
Lou Adams says he has spoken with Mirasol Capital multiple times about the preservation of Roy Creek Canyon, but recent talks have stalled, with multiple meetings having been rescheduled.
They may never see eye to eye, and the truth is somewhere in the middle.
While Mirasol Capital says it's taking every step possible to prevent damage to Roy Creek,
we have an impact. This project will have an impact. It's just the nature of humans living on the Earth's surface.
Lou is still optimistic.
We think it's important that we work with the landowners in some way that brings about a positive result.
Mirasol Springs is still in the preliminary stages of their planning. They're hoping to break ground next year. In Western Travis County, Eric Hendrickson, KXAN News.